Just elaborate what you were.
No, I'm not saying that's the context of it in itself is not appropriate. Is not.
As a private citizen or as a.
No. I think what I'm saying is that when you talk about connections to Russia, I think the only connection that anyone's made with President Trump is multiple years ago he hosted a pageant there, and he's some of the he owns condos around the world, and some of them were sold to some Russians, and I think he sold a house to one several years back. That's his connection. When you talk about the other side, you look at what the Obama administration's connections were. You have a Secretary of State that was selling a fifth of our country's uranium. You have a Clinton Foundation concern with some of the donations they got. You've got the former president, her husband, giving paid speeches, getting a personal call from Vladimir Putin. You've got a stated goal of their of that administration, of Secretary Clinton, to have a reset to, quote, strengthen Russia. So when you compare the two sides in terms of who's actually engaging with Russia, trying to strengthen them, trying to act with them, trying to interact with them, it is night and day between our actions and her actions, and yet no one questioned what she was doing or how she was handling it. And yet,
her pattern of behavior is more suspicious than President Trump.
I think that if you compare the two, it's definitely, when you talk about the stuff that went to their foundation, the concerns that existed around the sale of one-fifth of all the country's uranium, the paid speeches, the personal calls from Vladimir Putin, I think that when you want to look at a connection to Russia, there is a clear one there and much less of one that ever existed on this side. Trey.
Sean, I just wanted one other thing. So, Sean, in terms of the Nunes chronology, just to clarify, when we're asking questions about process like dates and people, we're not attempting to ascertain the geography of the executive complex. We want to know who knew what when.
I understand that.
So my question is, so I will ask that directly, forget about the technical questions. Mr. Nunes was on the campus. You say we don't know who let him in the gate, so
right.
Apparently it is, and you described, I believe, this is a normal process, right? Tell me if it is normal the way that I am describing it. Mr. Nunes, the head of an investigatory committee, is allowed to roam around the executive complex, we don't know who let him in, to speak to two deputy-level members of the National Security Council. He is then allowed to see information. He then obtains an appointment, from my understanding of the chronology, with the President of the United States to disgorge that information. He then goes public with that information. Then, 7 or so days later, you say it would be appropriate for everybody to come down here and look at it. Is that a normal process?
Well, I would take issue with a number of the aspects of your chronology. Number one, which you're forgetting, is that initially he is the one that publicly said, well before any of this came to light in terms of the president's March 5th tweet, that he was just looking into this whole matter. He, according to John Roberts, his own reporting, just said that neither of those individuals, as described in your paper's reporting, are accurate. So I would dispute several of the pieces of that. And then as far as him roaming around the White House. No, I understand this, but you, again, you jump to a ton of conclusions about, and again, I love watching some of these shows where they jump to conclusions for all.
Hold on. Several times prejudged the investigation is clearing the White House. You've said it twice at the podium today.
Right.
So
what I'm saying is, because I'm focused on the substance of this, Glenn. I'm actually, right. And so where's any of the reporting been in your paper about Evelyn Faucus and her revelation that this is what they sought to do? Where has been the reporting in your paper that NBC News just recently covered, that other officials? You seem to be really focused on who showed up where and what door they went in and how it happened. To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunes has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared. And nothing that is inappropriate, and exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
Did the Chief of Staff, who is, in my understanding, an exceptionally attentive gatekeeper to who comes in and out of the Oval Office, did the Chief of Staff know that he was on the campus? Did he approve his?
No, so remember, you're okay, but you're playing cute there. You're doing two things. One is you're talking about the Oval Office, and the other one is the campus. Right? So, no, the Chief of Staff does not know every single person who's on the 18 acres at any given time. They are people who are appropriately either cleared or waved through the system or are escorted on in some way, shape, or form? No, we don't track every single person who's on the 18 acres. Do we know, generally speaking, who's in the Oval Office? Not all the time, because people can go in. But if there was a meeting, in that case, we all sat back here. He made the announcement, and again, you're leaving out a key part. He actually briefed the press before he told anyone. We all found out, you, me, everyone else, that he was coming down here after he held a press conference with your colleagues to say he was coming down here based on stuff that he'd found that didn't have to do with Russia, that a whistleblower source had given him. Now, the other reporting that I'm hearing today is actually that the sources that you describe in your paper are not accurate. And while I'm not going to comment on either, I think there is an assumption that everything and the chronology that we know over is accurate, which I don't believe from further reporting that it is. And I also believe that some of the comments that have come out publicly in terms of some of the Obama administration are conveniently left out of that discussion. I think that that is interesting, how no one seems to really cover the fact that in a senior Obama administration with high-level clearances talked about the spreading of classified information for political purposes, and no one seems to care.
But just to be clear, Mr. Priebus, Mr. Kushner, Mr. Bannon did not have knowledge of his being on the campus having this interaction with
I don't know. Again, you asked two questions and you melded them together. No one knew that he was coming to speak to the president. He announced that on television during a press conference. Tamara.
Yeah, my understanding is that Dr. Farkas left the administration in 2015.
Okay.
Why is what she said in 2017 relevant to something that allegedly happened in 2016?
The question I would have for you is exactly, why is it? What is she says in her things, I'm urging my colleagues, I'm urging it to get the Hill, but it's odd that the presumption seems to be, why is it interesting? Have you asked her?
No, you're the
No,
one
you
telling
haven't.
us to
So
confirm it right
she
now.
no, but she's been on television talking about what she's done, and you seem to have made no.
I don't believe everything I see on TV.
Well, neither do I. But I also I would assume that as a reporter that actually is interested in this story, a senior Obama administration official that handled Russia, that. All Obama administration officials generally.
She wasn't there in 2016.
Thank you. I appreciate the timeline. But I'm well aware of when it was. But my point is you seem to be rushing to her defense. At some point, she went on television and talked about actions that she and her colleagues took to spread classified information. And instead of defending her, it might be worth asking her what she's talking about, who she spread it to, why she did it, was it appropriate, who cleared her to do it. Maybe those are questions that can ask instead of asking me to defend why a former Obama administration official is revealing stuff that should be extremely concerning. So I'm going to go back to Tamara.
One other question, which is, are you more concerned about that or Russian interference in the presidential election?
Well, I think that if I'm, as an American citizen, I'm very concerned about the fact that people potentially were sharing information about other Americans for political purposes and using classified information to do so and leaking it. That should be concerning to everybody. I mean,
The Russian interference?
no, that's not what I said. Please stop trying to. It's not. No.
It's just like, which is worse?
No, and I guess I don't. I mean, the answer is I think if someone's interfering with our election, that's not good. I don't think that someone revealing and leaking classified information is good either. I'm not sure that you should have to choose. I think that you can have outrage and concern for both, and I don't think we should have to pick as an American whether or not which freedom we want to have undermined. I think we should expect both of them. And so the idea that we should have to choose whether or not we want someone to interfere with our election or protect our civil liberties isn't one that we should want or that we should have questioned. Alexis.
Can I just ask three basic kind of follow-up factual questions? You've used two phrases here today. One is politically sensitive information and the other is classified information when you're talking about what the president believes was released. Because you said yesterday that you yourself had not seen the information, and that's my understanding as today, are those terms interchangeable or are they different in terms of what you know from the podium was released?
So there's actually a classification level. There is there's certain sensitive information on individuals, while not classified is considered stuff that the government protects. Then there's secret, there's top secret, and without getting into it, there's a lot higher. There are differences in classification levels. So while you may not reveal a piece of classified information, what they call PII information is sensitive information according to the government standards. So they are different. Each of them has a different classification level.
But is your understanding, you've been told that the material that the president is sharing with the committees includes classified information as well as politically sensitive information. That's your understanding?
Yes.
All right. Second question. You said Congressman Schiff is coming today?
That's I know that he has made contact and is trying to arrange a time.
And can you share with us who will be responsible for escorting him to the proper place, showing him the materials, walking him through it, letting him absorb it? Is he bringing staff? Can you just explain this?
I don't know the answer to that question. I know that they were arranging a time, etc. I think it's going to. A lot of it will detail if he is requesting it. I don't know the nature of. I know that the request was made, and that's one that there's follow up with the staff at the staff level to determine all of those things.
The material that the president has wanted to share with the House and the Senate committees, has it already been shared with the FBI, or did the FBI already have the materials?
I don't know the answer to that. Some of it. I don't know. It's NSC. NSC pulls materials from the various agencies. So where that all came from, and is it single source? Is it a combination of those? I don't know the answer to that.
Do you have the answer to that?
I can ask. Again, part of it is there's a question of whether or not we have the ability or the right to release it. And again, as much as I appreciate where it came from, I think, again, I go back to it's does it really matter? Does it matter if it came from the CIA or the NSA or another three-letter agency? Or is the issue, Alexis, whether or not, as I've said before, whether or not there is a concern about what that information is doing, who used it improperly, what possibly could have happened? I mean, that, again, it's where it came from.
Perhaps that wasn't clear. What I'm asking is, the executive branch, the FBI, has a separate investigation. I'm asking, the president believes he has evidence that is germane to that investigation, as broad as Director Comey has described. My only question—
well, first of all, just so we're clear, the FBI's investigation pertains specifically to, from what the director said in open testimony, to Russia. What the president's, this is not what I believe they are investigating. Or
I misunderstood. I thought that the FBI was also had broadened the investigation beyond just simply Russia.
I don't know. You should. I'm not aware of that.
You could just find out.
No, but why? No, you can call the FBI. I'm not going to call the FBI and ask them what their investigation is, and then you'll write a story about how I called the FBI.
I'm asking you a separate question. Does the president believe that it is important for the FBI to have the information that he finds to be so egregiously offensive that classified and politically sensitive information was shared by the previous administration? I'm asking you a really simple
I don't. No,
question.
it's not. You think it's simple, but I think the reality is it depends. If the NSA, where it came from, who can share. You're acting as though it's a very simple process. It depends on the level of classification, who it came from, whether they have the authority to share it. There's a lot of things that go into this, and I know that it sounds really easy. It's not, and I think that that I know that a lot of times that just because it can get leaked out doesn't mean it's being handled appropriately. And I think there is a desire to make sure that this is done correctly and within the proper guidance of who has the authority to see the right things, and that all of the procedures are followed. That doesn't mean we just get to willy-nilly pick stuff and send it around to whoever. There is a reason that certain information is handled the way it is, so that we protect the methods and processes that are in accordance with the intelligence community. John.
Thanks a lot, Sean. This morning, the Republican chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Jason Chaffetz of Utah, took issue with the president's tweet. He said he does not believe that the Russian investigation that's being conducted by the FBI, by the Senate Intelligence Committee, by the House Intelligence Committee is a witch hunt. Why does the president believe it's a witch hunt? He also said before I get your answer to that. He also said that he doesn't think it's proper for the president to